one of the differences between Dzogchen and the Madhyamaka is that Dzogchen focuses more on the nature of mind. Mahamudra focuses on the nature of mind. When I say mind, I mean the consciousness that beholds the object. There's a consciousness and there's an object of consciousness, right? If I look at something, I look at this pen. There is the pen, and there is my eye. And the Dzogchen will focus on the mind, whereas the Madhyamaka will focus on the object, right? And the reason why that is so is that the Madhyamaka focus on the object because it's objects that we desire or that we hate or that we are proud of or we are attached to. My family, my country. I mean, in your country right now, there's a lot of that going on. My this, my that, make America great again. All this stuff. The object it seems to be the thing we need to focus on. What is this object? What is the object? Whereas if you focus on the mind, which is also a very valid way of doing it, then you focus on just, well, what is the mind doing when it is sort of in the throes of desire or anger? What is this kind of state of mind? It is a mind that it naturally and innately believes in its own object as being real. And then the question is, well, is there another state of mind that is not sort of necessarily ignorantly clinging to the Dzogchen and Mahamudra would concentrate on getting to the nature of mind, the clear, if you like, undefiled, clear light nature, Samantabhadra, whatever you want to call it, nature of mind, which is rather like the sky the sun when there are no clouds, right? And they'd focus on that, whereas the Madhyamaka would focus on the object. But they are both equally good methods because you can't have object without subject. So the two work together.
Yeah, I see that.
Mm.
So something else I think is a little confusing for people new to this topic is just the idea of the mind in general. We don't talk about that much. So how are the Buddhists defining mind in Madhyamaka? Like, what are we talking about when we say mind?
Well, mind, I mean, probably consciousness is probably a better word to use, but you can use mind. There are two words in Tibetan. I mean, mind is used when you want to separate. So it's your body, speech, and mind, right? Body, speech, and mind. Mind is the non-physical aspect of a human being. Speech is the speech, and body is the fit matter. So there you have body, speech, and mind. But when you talk about consciousness, consciousness is the is the is the part is the function of mind, is the process of mind, which by nature has the nature of knowing. It is the nature of knowing, and it has the nature of being clear or transparent. It's rather like a mirror. Whatever you put in front of a mirror, it doesn't matter what you put in front of a mirror, the mirror will reflect it. And so the mind is like a mirror because whatever it's transparent, it's clear. Whatever comes into the mind comes into the mind in the way that the clouds arise in the sky, it'll come. But the difference between a mind and a mirror is a mirror doesn't know anything, whereas a mind knows. And by knowing doesn't mean knowing correctly. It just means to apprehend its object. It apprehends its object. So even if I hallucinate some dreadful kind of creature in my room, there is a subject object going on there, a duality subject object. There's the mind, a consciousness, and there is the appearance of a monster, even though it doesn't exist externally. So, in that sense, consciousness is that which is in the nature of knowing, and it can have different levels. There is a very subtle level of mind, which is called the primordial mind, which is only present at the time of death for most of us, although in tantric practices it can be activated, and because it's very important to activate this subtle level of mind. So in mind as conscious as that, but mind as something which is to be tamed to be developed and to be developed into, say, an enlightened mind is something which is something which is for which you need to understand Buddha nature. Now, Buddha nature, means that the mind, whatever it is, as it's kind of clear and knowing, has the ability to become anything that you want it to become, as long as you're prepared to put in the effort. There is a kind of, and this is meditation. Meditation is transforming the mind, i.e., the mind is something that can be transformed. It can be tamed. It can be mastered. There's a saying in Buddha in Tibetan that we are master of mind. It shouldn't be the other way around. We take charge of the mind, and any kind of meditation on compassion or love or renunciation or generosity, whatever it is simply a question of developing and planting then these mind, this, Tibetan has something which is called like a sort of is kind of a replacement therapy type of process going on here. If you are angry by nature, if you're an angry person, that what that means is the mind is primarily dictated by a kind of impulse that wants to hurt people, angry, nasty. So what do? You then hear about the teachings of love and compassion and so forth within text, and you attempt to replace that grumpy, angry mind with a mind of love. You gradually bring in through reasoning, understand why anger is bad, why it doesn't work, why love is good. Thinking about then gradually, the mind of love will replace the mind of anger, and this it's like light replaces dark. Light and dark cannot exist together. An angry mind and a loving mind can't exist. One will always destroy the other. So that mind is so important. Mind is everything in Buddhism, and it has to be mind as consciousness is one thing, as I talked about before, but mind is something to be transformed. You don't transform the body. In one Indian text, they say if you practice jumping, like in the Olympic sport, you learn to jump, higher. You can jump higher and higher and higher, but each time you jump, you start from the ground. You don't jump up here and then next time you jump, you stay there. You don't. You've got to start again. You can go higher and higher, but it's limited. But the thing about mind is that once you get mind to a particular level, you don't fall down again. You start from that level and you go and and when it develops ultimately, that is enlightenment, that is Buddhahood and all these qualities, love, compassion, the six parameters, giving, ethics, concentration, single pointedness of mind, wisdom, enthusiasm, all these things which are to be developed. Buddhism is a part of, the word path in its definition means insight. It means development of the mind. The path is a mental path. So like that, mind is, yeah, hugely important. Yeah. But mind, yeah.
Yeah, so let's take something like you were saying anger, then compassion. So when you're angry, when somebody's angry, this manifests in the mind, but as some sort of a thought, or this is a feeling, like an emotion. Like, do we make the distinctions? Like, what? Because I hear this word a lot. People say the thought, the bad thought, good thought, negative thought. But what exactly, or what's a thought? Like, what are we talking about? It's like when we meditate, we can see mental images. We can hear, we can even smell, recall smells and stuff. So, what's exactly being said here when we use this word thought? Does that do you?
Well, I mean, in Tibetan, Buddhism talks about the mental factors. Uh, Mental factors. I mean, going back to mind again. There is mind. There are two types of mind. One is what is called primary consciousness, which is essentially seeing, feeling, no, seeing, hearing, and so forth, right? So, but there are other types of mind around that mind, which are what you talk about. There's thinking, there's feeling, there's reaction, there's motion. These are called secondary minds, right? So if you listen to a piece of music, you know, you hear the music through your ears and your audio consciousness, right? And all that consciousness does is hear it. It doesn't judge, it doesn't do anything. But then there are thoughts that come, oh, I like this, I don't like it. Um, then there's concentration. You concentrate on it, and then there's analytical types of thoughts that will separate out, or it reminds you from something from the past, and you become emotional. All these things are called they're called secondary minds, or in Tibetan it means that which comes from mind. That prime consciousness, which is like some sort of queen bee or something, it's there, and then everything that comes from that, all these things, these are a thought. I mean, a thought is just a thought. It's like I think about what I'm going to do tomorrow, and I go to that. That's a thought. There are feelings. There are feelings of happiness, pain, grief, all these things, and then there are emotions. They're all, and some of them are good, and some are not good. Some of the secondary minds are good, and they're listed. They're described. Compassion, love is good. Anger, desire, pride. These four are not good. Then there are sort of functional things, like the ability to focus on something. If you concentrate on something, you're thinking about it. If you're watching something, or if you're driving, you've got to concentrate on the road. But at the same time, you can hear what the person in the passenger seat is talking to you, so is saying. So you can concentrate, and you can also listen at the same time, and all these things are going on at once. So yeah, one mind can have several other types of mind. It's a very complicated system, but there is a whole genre of study about these. There are 51. Actually, they're limitless, but there are 51 main types of secondary mind. Don't know what they are.
So when so this is the difference when you were meditating down in Bodh Gaya, then you go to Tibet, then this opens up and now you're seeing like from the practice and study, you're realizing the nature of this mind is massive and complex, which you might not have realized previously just sitting.
Yes, I don't think, yes. I mean, I think it has its place, there's Vipassana meditation, and I know people who have done it for years, and it brings them peace of mind. It's very good. But it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. And it wasn't for me, really, because I didn't feel I knew anything. I felt I was experiencing, but I didn't know. And so, as I go back to this, using the human mind, the human critical intelligence. One of the problems these days is that many Westerners, when they get into Tibetan Buddhism and they go to a center in the West or in India or so forth, and they kind of leave their critical intelligence behind. They try to become a Tibetan. They try to become and follow all these Tibetan rituals and traditions and stuff, and wearing different clothes and robes and that. I'm not talking about monks or nuns, but it just seems that I go back to the Shakyamuni Buddha. He didn't follow anyone. You know, he don't follow leaders. He didn't follow anybody. I mean, the thing about Tibetan Buddhism, as the guru is very important, but that has to be understood in terms of culture, and in terms of the lack of sort of education and accessibility to texts and things in the ancient days. I mean, these days we have AI. If I want to know anything, I just ask ChatGPT, and it tells me. In fact, just this morning I asked it about one particular Deva realm that I was interested in. It was wonderful. It just came up with everything. I didn't know. We have so much access, so maybe AI is our new guru. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So I wasn't trying to make to run down the Vipassana. What I was trying to do is make a comparison. Like if we just a new person interested in Dharma or meditation enters into just a sitting, just any kind of shamatha practice, versus somebody like you who's put in many, many years of study in Abhidharma and debate and study Madhyamaka. Now, when you sit and practice shamatha, there's a whole different thing happening as a result of this inquiry into what the mind is and nature phenomena.
Yeah, I mean, the word shamatha has different meanings. I mean, in the Vipassana understanding of shamatha, is simply to observe. It's a kind of observing without judging, whereas the Vipassana element is the knowledge. But in the type of Buddhism that I studied, shamatha is a single pointedness of mind, which is a tool that enables you to use the wisdom and insight far more fruitfully. Because at the moment, if you were to analyze, as I said before, this ultimate truth that it goes beyond the conventional, and you think, well, what am I? Where am I? Do I exist one with the body? And you examine, ask yourself questions, and then at the end of the question, you'll get some kind of insight, but it won't stay. It won't stay. It'll disappear. Why? Because we don't have shamatha. So shamatha and vipassana should be together. They're linked in the. So whatever shamatha you have, it's single pointed concentration of mind. But on its own, it's very good. But it needs to be accompanied by wisdom, insight. Those two must go together. Mm.
Yeah. Well, I think, and you had said earlier, like, if somebody goes up into the mountains for a retreat and they get stuck or whatever, but because they've debated, something will come up because they've done these.
Yeah,
So they've kind of created this whole, I don't know, library, but experience of study comes with them now. They've developed this. Like you said, the mind keeps developing up.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know the term mindfulness, right? I mean, mindfulness is something that is very popular in the West these days. But I mean, in sati and in vipassana, in Goenka, it's very important too. But in Tibetan, the word actually means memory. I mean, it means to recall. It means to remember. Jamba, sati. I mean, and so it has some kind of link with the past always. So going back to the guy up in the mountain or wherever, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a guy in a cave in a mountain. You can be out in the bazaar talking to somebody, right? And you can be in a situation and maybe things get a bit sticky or someone says something and you feel a little bit hurt or whatever. At that point, memory, this jamba, this kind of mindfulness kicks in. And what it does, it sort of it reminds you of something you've learned, something either in a book or through meditation, some insight you had in meditation that morning or whatever. And of course now you're out in the street, it's no longer there, but it comes back. So the idea, if you start feeling yourself getting angry, and then you remember, hang on, no, 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 anger's no good. It's based on a false premise that that this person out there is some kind of hateful being. It's also based on the fact that I am being hurt and there's no real I. And you remember all these things that come up. And so it's called memory. The other word that's important is awareness. Memory and awareness. Awareness means to know what's going on at any one time. If you know that now I'm getting a little bit angry. It happened to me the other day, actually. I was having a debate with this guy he's a great Tibetologist, but he's not a Buddhist and he's slightly anti-Buddhist.
Oh,
No.
that's
And
fun.
and I could feel myself. And so what happened there is that right now, oh, now I'm reacting in a wrong way. I'm reacting like this. I'm doing this. Is this good? So that's awareness. And then the mindfulness will kick in and say, well, hang on, very well, you remember this, remember that, remember all beings are there. You're not there to beat someone. You should be kind and loving because if the guy's either right or he's wrong. If he's wrong, you should feel sorry for him. If he's right, then you accept whatever he says. Either way, there's no need to get angry. So awareness and mindfulness, these are like two they call them, like they're like spies in the mind. So that is where and whether it's something you remember from your debating days or whether it's something wherever, this mindfulness, it's not mindfulness as it's used now. It just seems to be some awareness of the present, but that's not mindfulness in Tibetan Buddhist sense. It's much more than that.
Yeah, when you're talking, okay, so mindfulness in the present, we're talking about mindfulness of like the perceptions or mindfulness of thoughts and emotions, feelings.
Everything, everything. I mean, the mindfulness of the present, I would say, is awareness. In Tibet, going back to these 51 minds, these are two of them. There are three, actually. There's yeah, there's mindfulness, there's awareness, and there's conscientiousness. So mindfulness means to remember when you're out and about, to remember all the things that you've learned and known through meditation. And so they act as your guide, as you don't get swayed or seduced, something like that. Awareness is to know what's going on at any one time. And conscientious is just simply means to be careful and to be careful what you do. It's like, for example, what's the example they use? Is they, if you had open wound on your arm and it wasn't covered, and you're in a busy street, you're very careful not to let anyone touch it, right? Be very careful. Well, conscientiousness is like that. It means to be careful, to take care. The opposite of when you get drunk, right? When you get drunk, none of those three are there, right? Conscientiousness is not there because you don't care. You don't care what you say. You don't care what you do. Oh, you don't care. That's the opposite, you know. And you're unaware because you don't know what you're doing and you've forgotten all the things that you should be doing. And so, it can be understood, those three, very important.
That's wonderful. So let me ask one more question. So, you know, like I said, a lot of people who new practitioners especially, and I think even some seasoned practitioners, you sit and you meditate and you're having like this internal dialogue, this thoughts. And then they say, be mindful or then concentration. Um, what does that mean? Like, are we supposed to concentrate, like hold one thought or concentrate on awareness and just let thoughts come and go? You hear this too, like thoughts are like clouds, you just don't pay attention to them. Like, what are you doing with those thoughts in meditation?
Well, it depends whether they are thoughts that are uncontrolled or whether they are deliberately. If thinking about the kind of uncontrolled thoughts that rise up in your mind because of something happened previously and you can't get rid of it, then there are a couple of approaches you can do. Yes, in Dzogchen and Mahamudra, you can see them as being sort of like some clouds and allow them to dissolve into the sort of primordial nature of the mind. If you can do that, it's not always you can do that. That's fine. You can do that, and that's why these Dzogchen teachings will say, don't think, don't do this, don't meditate, don't do anything deliberate. They're not saying just sleep and do nothing. They're saying that allow these thoughts to run their course or allow them to dissolve. Don't hang on to them, and they will just dissolve. That's one way. And the other way is to sort of uh, quite opposite, is to be quite deliberately sort of hostile towards them, you know, and to sort of get rid of them. Manjushri holds a sword. I mean, what is a sword for? It's for cutting, isn't it? And these thoughts come up, and you banish them. Get out. They're like unwanted guests in the room. Someone is in your house. Get out. Get out. You push them out. You're quite, all this sort of wrathful deity stuff. Angry deities. That's what they're about. They're not hurting anybody. There's a kind of wrathfulness in Buddhism that can be used against unwanted thoughts, and you can attack them. Also, but not just blindly, but with knowledge, knowing that they have arisen from the mind, that they don't really have any kind of firm kind of validity to them, that they are based on ignorance because they believe in something that doesn't exist. And knowing that, then you get rid of them. I mean, there's wonderful verse called the Eight Verses of Training of the Mind. And one of the eight verses is as soon as some disturbing thought, emotion arises in my mind, I get rid of it. So there are these two different ways of dealing, and people will. It depends on the person, what kind of person they are. What you shouldn't be is like the story of the king who got shot by the arrow, and the minute you know this story, and the ministers would get try to pull the arrow off his head. He said, "No, no, wait, wait. I want to. Who shot it, and which direction did it come from, and how far?" And of course, he died before. You shouldn't be like that. You know, it shouldn't be like that. Once uh the great teaching that said you should be like the story of this meditator who was reading a text, and the text says that you should not sit on animal skins if you're meditating. So he was sitting on the skin of an animal, so he immediately took out this animal from him. But in the next line it says, however, if you are sick or ill, then you can. So he was a bit sick, so he put it back again. And you should practice Buddhism like that. In what that means is that you practice you're a practical, whatever is necessary at the time, do it. You know, don't rely too much on sort of, oh, I got to do this, I got it. Whatever is, they say in Tibetan, in the mind training, whatever your biggest problem is, focus that. If you're an angry person, focus on anger, forget about desire. If you've got desire, focus on that. Focus on whatever is important at the moment and deal with it. And it's the practical application of this replacement therapy I was talking about. You've got these things in your mind, you get rid of them, because two black and white, dark and light can't exist together. It's a hugely proactive process, Buddhism. It's not sitting quietly, sort of doing nothing, and not that. It's hugely active, proactive. Yeah, something like that.